back. Shumita, with your permission, should we start? So, good afternoon, and we are happy to be back. Post tea, while we were listening to Professor Rudranshu Mukherjee, I was reminded of Begum Rokeya Sultana's dream. I don't know how many people have read it, but Begum Rokeya in 1905 also said, "Educate girls." That was the theme of Sultana's dream. So I was reminded of that. So we are back here for the panel discussion. May I invite the moderator, Dr. Madhupa Bokshi, Dean of Media Science, the Heritage Academy, Professor Dr. Mamata Chaudhary Ray, former Pro Vice Chancellor, University of Calcutta, Dr. Rosina Ahmed, Senior Consultant, Tata Memorial Center, Kolkata, and Dr. Swati Bhattacharya, Journalist and Researcher, Anandabajar Putrika. May I request you to please come up on stage. And may I also request Shumita to come up on stage and felicitate our distinguished panelists. Shumita is felicitating the moderator, Dr. Madhupa Bokshi, Dean of Media Science, the Heritage Academy. Shumita Ray to Professor Mamata Chaudhary Rai, former Pro Vice Chancellor, University of Calcutta. Dr. Rosina Ahmed, Senior Consultant, Tata Memorial Center, Kolkata. Sunita Roy, President, UWAC. And Dr. Swati Bhattacharya, Journalist and Researcher, Anandabajar Putrika. And now I hand over the microphone to Madhupa Bokshi. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we were taken back to history. And I will now if you allow me to use media balance, cut you back to modern times. And I'll start with a little bit of a travel experience that I have had lately in different parts of India. This was around about close to end of the last year. We were on a tour of, I think all of you have been to Rajasthan, or some of you have been to Rajasthan. And we were supposed to go to a little village in Rajasthan to have a village experience. We were taken by a very young chap who was a dari maker to a small potter's home. Me being the excited one always in the family, in fact, more excited than the younger one, sat down with the potter and started on working on the wheel with the clay. Never made much shape out of it. Soon I had to go and wash my hand. And I walked, they showed me an open tap in the corner of the courtyard. I walked and there was a little young woman, not a little girl, a young woman, all covered in veil, pumping the pump and from where water flowed. Curiously, I asked her, aren't you going to open the veil? I want to see your face. She said, no, I can't. I said, why? The potter is my husband, and see there, my father-in-law is standing, so I can't open my veil. I have to be covered. I said, what about doing some pottery? Because I'm sure you will do far better. You stay with them. She said, I'm not allowed to do pottery. I said, so what do you do? I take care of my kids, and she would be barely 18 or 19-year-old. And I take care of my, and the cooking, nothing else. I'm traveling, and this is again last year, somewhere end of the last year. It's in Sikkim. It's in Meghalaya, and there's this forest that we had gone into to see the forest, and this young girl comes up to me with a little baby in her arms and says, where is the restroom? Where is the restroom? I start chatting with her. She's just 20-year-old with a young child in her hand, hasn't been to school. And what is her dream? She wants to put her child into school. She doesn't want to be the way she is. She has to depend, though it's a matriarchal society. All her sisters have been married, and she wants her children to at least go to school. And back in college, there comes a woman whom we are celebrating. We have invited her to talk to our students. Why? She has opened a shop in Acropolis Mall. It's called Cakelicious. And she has donned a burqa, which is a pink-colored burqa. And she talks about her journey. She had graduated from our college. She had offers from Wipro and the likes. And her conservative family had deemed it fit to get her married rather than to get her and do the job. It would be late night shift, she wouldn't be able to manage, and therefore they had put her into manage. After an unfruitful relationship, she walks out of the marriage with a child, and she competes in the Shark Tank. I'm aware, I hope all of you know Shark Tank, and she competes in the Shark Tank, and she gets a funding. And therefore, she's an entrepreneur and she's hoping that she would be able to open more shops, not only just in Acropolis, but across the city perhaps. So here is the paradox of development or empowerment, as we say in India. He pointed out Rani of Jhansi. He pointed out the woman who stayed behind and who never fought, but perhaps was as victorious. Perhaps the battles that those women in Meghalaya, the women in Meghalaya that I met, perhaps the battle that girl in that Rajasthani home is far more, I would say, heavier. Yet we don't get to know about it. Thankfully, we have these forums. Thankfully, way back, United Nations in 1985 had defined women empowerment for us. I would just like to read out, before I go over to the panelists, what that women empowerment meant. Empowering women in the economy and closing gender gaps in the world of work, having sustainable development goals, particularly Goal 5 to achieve gender equality, Goal 8 to promote full and productive employment and decent work for all, also Goal 1 of ending poverty, Goal 2 on food security, Goal 3 on ensuring health, and Goal 10 on reducing inequalities. This is not UN, sorry, these are the SDG goals that have been developed. Research indicates the present contribution of women to the GDP remains at 18%. However, simply by offering equal opportunities to women, India could add $1 $770 billion to its GDP by 2025. India is the third largest ecosystem. It has the third in ecosystem. India is the third largest in terms of startups in the world. Also the third largest in the unicorn community. Yet only 10% of them have women founders due to the challenges posed by the pandemic. India's gender gap has expanded by 4.3%. Therefore, we need economic opportunities, we need social opportunities, we need political opportunities. What is the best way to find out? It is the way to find out from our panelists who have been in the forefront of taking the cause of women in various ways, in the various domains they have worked. So therefore, I'll start with the introduction of the first panelist today, Dr. Mamata Chaudhary. She began as a lecturer in economics in Lady Brabourne College, served as a principal of Lady Brabourne College, served as a principal of Presidency College, was the president of West Bengal Board of Secondary Education, was pro-vice chancellor of University of Calcutta. She has had various academic roles, various administrative roles, and has been a leader in her own way. Ma'am, may I request you?
Thank you, Madhupa. And it's little late. Respected empowered ladies sitting in front of all of you are highly empowered, as I find, and my special gratitude to Bipradash Babu for coming to listen to us. I wish we could have a good number of young males in this forum. First, I begin by paying homage to Swami Turiyanandaji, not because we are discussing sitting in this hall named after him, but I was remembering one wonderful incident. He was escorting Mother Sri Sima to her Jaganbati ancestral home from Bardhaman. In those days, the roads were very bad, and there was a ditch. It was close to midnight, very late. There was a ditch. Many of you perhaps know the story. And Swamiji, Turiyanandaji, he thought that not very big ditch, but it was a ditch, that perhaps that would disturb Mother. She was sleeping. She was not in good health. And like Aruni, he decided to just sleep on that ditch and the cart would go over him. Mother was a highly spiritual, I am not here to describe her. But the spiritual, the mother, the universal mother, that's why we should take lesson. Such sensitivities, I think, her entire life. We are not that sensitive even to the needs of the children. We are supposed to give training in different institutions. So Mother was so sensitive. She could understand, and immediately she got down. But what I am paying homage to him, because he set an example how, irrespective of gender, boys and girls, how they should treat their own mothers in home. Then there would be no disparity, gender disparity. So we have not been able to give them this lesson in schools and colleges. it should begin with full respect to the mother in the house. We are failing in that. And the mother on her part also should be sensitive, very sensitive in giving education. It's not formal education. Formal education comes at a later stage, we often forget. The second, I am extremely happy that today I am getting an opportunity to pay collective homage to great souls. The two first graduate university women, Professor Chandramukhi Basu and Dr. Kadambini Ganguly. They were the first university graduate women, not only because they graduated from University of Calcutta, not only in India, but in entire British Empire. But that they were the first graduates is a historical thing. What is important, they did not sit back in those days, 19th century, with their degrees. You know, Dr. Kadambini Ganguly, a more familiar face, she obtained this graduation because she was not getting admission in the Calcutta Medical College. That was the minimum requirement. And fortunately, in the constitution of the Calcutta Medical College, it was not written that the graduate should be a male. They forgot to. So only they could never imagine that one lady in those days would be so dedicated that she would first obtain the graduation degree and then take the opportunity to take admission in the Calcutta Medical College. So what is important, she did that, and you know that so much social taboo and everything she fought. Maybe often to discount ladies, we say, with the support of her family, etc., etc. But she had to balance extremely difficult way of balancing the household with her profession. And the professional field also, she had to face such difficulties. It's a story, big story. Again, history, nothing captures it more than history. So history, she was a truly empowered lady. She was one of the 6 representatives in 1889 Congress session. And in that session also it is remarkable, Dr. Annie Besant, she was chairing. And she hailed Dr. Ganguly, a young doctor, by observing that she is a symbol how India's freedom would facilitate women's upliftment. So she remains indeed a symbol of empowerment. We have to fight against all odds, even today, but that should not deter us from taking decision. What is meant by empowerment? No one will give us power. It is, we have to generate self-power, at least in these days, right? Women can do, because we are plenty, but not plenty in top positions. I am supposed to reflect on what is happening. Chandramukhi Basu, yes. She was the first lady principal of Bethune College. You know, that was again another arena of women's empowerment. So many revolutionaries, including Pritilata Waddedar, and many others. And it was in this college ground, the first student star was faced by principal, and was right. She had to leave because of that. The students were so determined in those days, in late 20s. 1920s, of course, 1920s. I'm not referring this 20. So this is the background story of what women can do and what we are doing. What we are doing, why we are not doing. So that dream of Annie Besant, which she could see in Kadambini Ganguly, that has not been fulfilled. After 75 years, Madhupa was referring to gender discrimination and all this, some figures she has tried to give. I will give you just only one figure. I am not going to talk in terms of figures, though we have many figures, right, to pinpoint problem areas. But in India also, in India particularly after the planning commission is not there, Niti Aayog is there, but still we are not getting good published gender disaggregated data. That is one problem across the world, gender disaggregated data. But some type of documents are coming up. So I'll give you one figure just, the Global Gender Disparity Report. In this, we find that in 2022, after COVID, out of 146 countries which have provided data to World Economic Forum, publish this document every year, India's place in terms of gender discrimination or gender disparity rather is 135th. But India is not that low in terms of per capita income, in terms of even human development. When we discount the human development index in terms of inequality and in terms of gender disparity, then we find that the human development has come down in Indian context. In some cases, it doesn't come down that much, not even in Bangladesh. So this sensitivity, right, of these indices to inequalities, that is also, I don't believe in that poverty is suffered more by women in terms of data, but whoever suffers poverty, abject poverty, that is very unfortunate, whether male or female. We cannot even imagine what is happening in the interiors. I had the good fortune to visit some interiors as head of the West Bengal board in 2010-11, during those 3 years before joining the university again. So I could find very bright faces because we are dealing with education. Very bright faces, exceptionally bright faces in interior Sundarban. 3,000, 4,000 students in one school. In one room, packed students, but so bright faces, girls and boys. But when I went to higher classes in those days, 1 decade back, right? The faces were not that bright. Something happened. Something happened. In our education system, we could not feed the students the way we should. And during the COVID period, you know that huge cognition erosion of children. But what I will focus on higher education because this is the University of Women's. But I do believe, working in education across different levels, that higher education, what results we get, crucially depend on what we are doing in school level, as you all know, right? Our creative faculty and also critical thinking, these are the four-way, the collaborative attitude, and many other things, the basic things, which is all these basic ingredients are needed in research and even in STEM. STEM means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So the status of higher education in India will determine the status of women in the forthcoming years more than it has determined so far. It is to be lamented that though the enrollment of women in higher education has increased very sharply, it is almost more than 46% right now, and it is fast going for a parity. But what kind of education women are opting for? Even in STEM, the percentage of women of total students in India is very high, higher than developed countries like USA, 43%. In USA, France, and Germany even, the percentage is less. But this study is not being transformed into a higher productivity of women because you know that today, sitting today, we should reflect the huge hours which women are spending on this kind of higher education, right? Including STEM education is very difficult. We have seen because the facilities at school level is very limited and more limited for women. The way the 12th class, I made a study when I was in school, the 12th class science learning opportunities, very restricted at one time, right? So when very restricted, particularly for girls, 5 kilometers had to go. So many families not interested in giving science. And that impact of that we find after 2 decades or 1.5 decades. What impact? Today's education will show the impact after a time gap at least 1 decade. So what kind of education to enhance the status of women we require right now? We have seen that women's higher education has increased consistently, and it is increasing at a good pace right now, but mostly in very general stream. And because of this, because it is, she has asked me to relate this to the status of women. So women, one status in the workplace, one status we cannot deny within the family. We cannot deny it because that is our natural tendency to attend our family needs. Priority, women's priority, and we should not deny that. We have to make the balance, strike the balance. We should never wait that we have to do this household chore, which is a trade-off. We have to remain, right, work up to 3 a.m., late night. We have to do that if we really want. The life should be a life of struggle, really. Without struggle, we cannot aspire for empowerment. Without struggling, no empowerment. If we feel that it will be gifted by someone else, that is really, we'll have to wait another century and find that India is still. So, India's rank is 135th. Our dreams that after freedom, the gender disparity, because lots of women participated in freedom, particularly in non-violent movement. After that, after Gandhiji's call, there was a tremendous awakening of women's desire for freedom. That is very remarkable, I think. Might be there is a debate whether that kind of non-cooperation movement and non-violent movement facilitated India's march towards freedom. Yes, it did. It did because the women folk, they became aware and they tolerated their sons, they encouraged their sons to join even violent freedom movement. So women did play a great role. That was empowerment. When within the household, you can influence your son, you can influence your daughter, right? The way the father behaves with the mother, the daughter also meekly sometimes accept the same behavior from the husband. So the mother has a greater role, right? And the son also learns that might be the way I would treat my wife. So this is the women should. And often we find, there are data in, I am not quoting the data, the domestic violence, actively the mother-in-law, the sister-in-law, they participate, cooperate, right? They are often engaged in doing violence against. So why this is happening? We have data, we have good women's forums, we also do movement. Why this is continuing, we have to ask ourselves. No one will help us. The police and everything, no one. Fortunately, women are now, they are organizing themselves, right? Very poorly educated women, many times, sometimes they cannot read and write, but they have the fire in them. They organize themselves and protest against this kind of violence. This is one thing, but we have seen that with rising education, the I am interested in this because in India, we are used to see hypergamy, the more in educational hypergamy, meaning that the husbands are obviously more educated than women. So they treat the women that you being less educated, your opinion will not matter, will not matter as my opinion will. But with this rising education, educational homogamy, that is marrying the classmates or same educational qualification, that is increasing in India also, as it is increasing in other parts of the world. And what is more remarkable, very recently, the trend of educational hypogamy, a better qualified girl marrying less qualified husbands, that is also improving. But in India, unfortunately, this is not ending in women's greater agency and is not giving a higher power within the family power hierarchy to the women. In other parts, education is resulting in higher economic empowerment. So, women's movement correctly, and also different government policies across the world, shifted from 1970s, in 85, this kind of empowerment, all this, that was known to all policymakers, mostly men. Everything was known. Because long back in this space, I tend to again recollect in that great book, Sister Nivedita, about the master as I saw him. She wrote, and it is known that Vivekananda, once he was asked, what do you think, what we should do for women? Then women's remarriage, widow remarriage, everything, that movement. He said, give them education. They are to take their own decision. Who am I to dictate? Who am I to dictate? That is important. That is empowerment. Education will facilitate women's ability to take decision. That was his dream long back. It's known, everything known. But the education policy post-independence neglected not only this, it was top heavy. Because of that, in one lecture, I think that is a very pertinent lecture, Lakrawala Memorial Lecture, Professor Amartya Sen, he explained why India missed the opportunities in late 70s and 80s of globalization which China could capture. Even after that, India's per capita income was higher than China's. But we could not, we missed because of our education system. Nehruvian education did not focus on school education, but top-heavy education, right? And that also for male. Science, he did open the IITs and everything, but school education was neglected. So Professor Sen, he analyzed that during that time, the new technology was coming up, and India was not ready to shift to a higher technology regime because the secondary passed number of workers was very less in India in late 70s.
Ma'am?
Time over.
Yes.
So just 5 minutes.
No, we will go to, again, come back to you. when
Okay,
we
okay,
have
okay,
that.
okay.
Okay, ma'am.
So what I am saying that the nature of higher education will have to take shape, keeping in mind what opportunities women would be able to grab, what would be their agency role. There has been a complete shift from welfareist, well-being approach to women to the agency approach. How we are facilitating women's agency through education, that will be the ultimate, right, deciding factor in women's empowerment, so far as education is concerned. And I am keen to listen from Dr. Rosina Bishwas, because in India's global disparity, India's rank is 146th out of those 146 countries. She's the last. And so, what are the reasons for this? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mamatidi. We will come back to education and how the agency role has to be played by women in taking forward higher education for empowerment. But equally important is healthcare. Equally important is the role that today women, that the women need to take care of the bodies. Not only women take care, women are the primary health caregivers at home and at hospitals. Yeah. So therefore, let me introduce you to Dr. Rosin Ahmed, who is a surgeon who heads the Department of Breast Surgery at Tata Medical Center, Kolkata. She graduated from Medical College, Kolkata, and trained as a surgeon in UK and Kolkata, mainly in Sheffield. She is a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of England and has a research MD degree from the University of Sheffield. She joined Tata Medical Center when it opened in 2011 to set up the busy breast oncoplastic surgical service, which treats over 1,000 new breast cancer patients. I want to dwell on the number, 1,000 new breast cancer patients each year, which is kind of scary. Every year, that means the amount of patients that are coming in for breast cancer. She's also part of an NGO called Padokhep, but we would love to hear more about the healthcare sector as we heard about education, how the women are empowered, or is there no empowerment, or the agency is not taking place. Thank you, Rosina.
Thank you very much. I would like to actually take on from where you started your talk, which was Kadambini Ganguly. Now, just prior to the pandemic, I was actually asked to write an article by somebody who was then working in Bashanti Devi College. And he asked me to write an article about health education in India, and I started looking into some things, which are not part of my day-to-day work, because my day-to-day work is as a doctor and treating patients. But I actually found it very interesting. India led at that time. Kadambini Ganguly was not only the first doctor, I mean, at that point, there were no graduate doctors in the UK, let alone in India. Okay? So India led. But then there were these articles, and these were in the lay press, you know, in various newspapers and things, which said that, they implied that women were wasting places by going into medical college. There were several of these, and one of these was forwarded to me by somebody when they knew I was looking into this. Basically, women were apparently taking up seats in medical colleges and then not fulfilling their potential as doctors at a later stage. So I thought this was an interesting point to look at in my article, in the article I'd been asked to write. So what I actually did was, so I'm from Calcutta Medical College, and in my graduating year in Calcutta Medical College, out of about 150 graduates, there were 25 women. So what I did was actually contact all 25 of them, well, apart from one who I could not trace, just to see what they were doing and to see how that fitted into these sort of newspaper articles and these things like the Gender Disparity Index and various other articles. Not articles, there are documents that show that women are not represented. I mean, Calcutta Medical College is probably not the best representative example. But what was interesting, well, of these 25 people, everybody was in medicine. That was a good start. But the subjective part was what was actually more interesting. Because I asked them, for their comments on, I sent them a couple of these articles. I asked them, what do you think about this? How has it affected your career? How have you reached where you are today? And almost everyone had had struggles. There were women who are doing very well now, who have been forced into specialties that they didn't want to choose. There were people who had been told, oh, well, you can't go abroad to do a post-graduation degree. These were all successful women who had got into that apex of medical education in Kolkata. Because this is through the joint entrance exam, and the top set go to Calcutta Medical College. And these women are actually the ones who are already empowered. They're already the privileged. They've got into the best place. And although they were, most of them, working in medicine and many of them at good positions, there were a lot of choices that had been forced upon them on the way, which they made quite interesting comments on. And this was the article that I wrote. And I think, I reflect on this when I see my patients. So how many women are in the difficult, you spoke about STEM subjects, but I'm going sort of within that. How many women choose anesthesiology, pathology? I'm not saying anything bad about these specialties. I'm just talking about the percentage of women that choose specialties where they think that they might be able to juggle the two roles. I'm not saying they choose it for any bad reason, but it is an ability to juggle the two roles. But that brings us to a completely different angle, in my opinion, and this is not limited to medicine. And that angle is that we as women are trying to fit into a working world which has been dictated by men. It's not that there is anything wrong with balancing two lives. But the fact is that there is a structure which has been created over the centuries that more is better, more work is better, hours of work should be longer, someone who's not working so many hours is somehow shirking. Is this really true? I think right now the world is also beginning to realize that there is such a thing as work-life balance and that women are possibly better at that, okay? That does not mean, so women have to come into decision-making positions where these things perhaps can be changed. So, they need to be in leadership positions, but they need to be in leadership positions to make change for the positive, not necessarily to fit in with the existing world as it is now. That's a personal opinion that I have. The other thing that I would like to just comment on, as a doctor, the specialty that I'm in, the majority of people that I see are women. The majority of patients that come to me are women, the vast majority. Now, when I start to talk to them, what happens? Especially if they're slightly less educated or rural women, what tends to happen when they walk into my room is the first thing I say, ki hoche, what brings you here and all the rest. And some male person who is with them who maybe not even, maybe their son-in-law or some, neighbor or uncle or, somebody, ঠিক আছে উনি বলতে পারবেন না আমি বলছি, okay? So that's where it starts. And believe me, as a doctor on a one-to-one basis, I literally shut those people up and I say, please wait. I will listen to you, but I'll listen to you later. You're asking them about intimate details of their life. You're asking them about things like, their menstruation, their childbirth, whether they various fairly private things. And who is this other person to start talking for them? But the fact is, this happens. We're talking about empowerment of women today. Now, we, I think, have a responsibility to create that one person at a time as well. There's one thing about policy or, the big picture and what can be done. But I think if each of us in our individual roles forces the woman in front of us, and when I start to talk to them, many of them have plenty of things to say. They just have not been given the opportunity. I often, when I examine my patients, I ensure that for at least some part of the consultation, there is no other person in the room except me and that woman. And then I'll ask her, what about this? Not facts, what do you want? That's where it's difficult, because many of these women have never been asked to take a decision or never been even allowed to take a decision. So, let's say even if they're educated, they've chosen a subject which has been chosen for them by their father. They've married a man who has been chosen for them by some other member of their family. A lot of major decisions in their life have been taken by other people, not necessarily in a bad way, but it's been taken. Now you're telling them, well, what would you choose for your treatment? And they're flawed. They've never actually been given a choice. But if you give them space for that choice and explain it to them, of course they understand it. Of course, you just have to actually do it. And so what I'm saying is that empowerment comes at two levels. And those of us who are privileged to be in a position where we can do something about it, it's not just about policy and waiting for policy to change. I think we need to take, like day-to-day decisions in our own lives that could be to do with the women who work in our house, or it could be people who we meet in various careers that we're in, to ensure that they get a choice, because they don't think they have a choice, but they really do. Maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you, Rizna. That was so good, because you touched upon the definition of empowerment, the power to make a choice and to do it day to day. With that, I will also go across to Swati. She has been a journalist. Swati Bhattacharjee is a journalist and social science scholar with a focus on women, gender and poverty reduction. She focuses on health, education, women's self-help movements, women's land rights, and other issues of poverty alleviation and gender justice. She has authored and edited several books in English and in Bengali and contributes articles to peer-reviewed journals. She received her PhD in social science from Tata Institute of Social Studies, Mumbai, and MSc in media research from University of Stirling, UK, and an MA in philosophy from Jadavpur University. She was a Fulbright Fellow of 2010-11 and ALJ Poverty Action Lab, MIT. She received the East-West Center Jefferson Fellowship 2006 and was awarded the Journalist of Courage and Impact Award by the EWC in 2018. She is currently the Senior Assistant Editor, Editorial Page, Anandabadar Putrika. She is also the founder member of the South Asian Women in Media, a network of women journalists of the SAARC countries. Let us hear about her thoughts on empowerment.
So I would also like to take off from where Rosina has just left. And this point that she was making about, men speaking for women. And after visiting villages over this last 25 years, I have become convinced that when a man speaks for a woman, it is not because he's afraid that the woman won't be able to speak. It is because he's afraid that the woman will speak very well. So that is the whole point of transfer of power. In every village, there will be at least 3, 4, 5 women, women who are Anganwadis, women who are Asha workers, school teachers, women who work for an NGO or in some social or political movement, who knows everybody knows her, তার এক ডাকে সবাই চলে আসবে, সে এক ডাকে সবাইকে চেনে. That woman will never be given a nomination to stand in the vote. It's always the wife or the daughter-in-law, the sister or the mother or mother-in-law of a neta who has been trained not to speak. And even that woman, unfortunately, learns to speak. Because so many people come to her and ask her for advice or for this or for that, by the time, about 2 years into her membership, she learns to science checks, she starts asking questions, she starts asking for hisab, accounts, and so she's not given a ticket in the next election, and there her career ends. Even so, if you look at the panchayats and the municipalities today, many more women are now actually in the seats than reserved seats. So even in this awful scenario, there is no worse, no more patriarchal an institution in the entire world than the political parties of India. They are the worst. And we find a peculiar thing that on the one hand, the state opens doors for women, and on the other hand, the political parties shuts the door on their face. And this game, it's not even a balancing game. This thing, this conflict, this confrontation is going on, and it is taking, I will not here be complacent and say, yes, this is the struggle, this is how we go forward, it's a long fight and we should fight together. No. Women today are paying a terrible, terrible price. Worse, we are worse than our mothers. Let there be no doubt about that. The labor force participation of women in India is now worst in history. In the 80s, we had more than 30% women in the workforce, women who actually earned with their labor. Today, it is less than 20%. There are only 2 countries in the world which are worse than India in terms of women's labor force participation, and these are Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Are we proud? And this is where I will submit before you my very humble thought that we are not doing enough. When I say we, just as Mamata was also saying, that some of us who have acquired the power of words, what do? We read, we write, we teach, we speak, we have a voice. Are we using the voice to reflect the reality that is around us? Women have been losing, women are being pushed out of the workforce. Women, during the COVID, as we all knew, most of the job loss was for women. And after the lockdown ended, the men got back their jobs, the women did not. Women's wages have come down. At a time when food inflation is at an all-time high, women's wages have come down. If you just go step anywhere, 1000 bidi badle ko paisa pawa jay. It used to be 130, 150, 170, now it is 110. একটা গোটা শাড়িতে জড়ি বসালে কত টাকা পাওয়া যায়? Every wage, একটা তাঁতের শাড়ি বুনলে কত টাকা পাওয়া যায়? Can you imagine what is actually going down from 2019 to 2023? If it is even 100 rupees decrease, can you imagine what is the decrease is in terms of purchasing price? So all of this being done systematically, and we observe it, but we are not doing enough to highlight it. Why am I saying this? For a particular reason. Every year when the Women's Day comes, in front of the Women's Day, we try to find out some significance of this particular year. As Ranjana was saying, that this was a year of digital divide, which is very important. It means everything for education and everything for work. But this year, 2023, is also the 35th year since the Shram Shakti report was released in 1988. And who was the chairperson? Ela Bhatt, who, as you know, passed away last year. So the Shram Shakti report first time revealed before the entire nation how women were actually being systematically deprived from their dues in their work. They were not being given credit. Chashi bou noy, tati bou noy, though they do all the hard work for weaving or for in the farm. This is true even today. You saw that huge farmers movement in 20 and 21, right? All the Punjabi women were out there making rotis. How much land do the Punjabi women own? How much of agricultural land is in their own name? Not even 10%. And this is the same here. Don't think it is anything. It's not even 25%, and that doesn't mean 25% the land, 25% the land titles. If you actually look at the acres of land and how much women hold, it's nothing. In an agricultural country, when women are 70% of agricultural labor, এখানে তেভাগা কবে হবে? জমি যার লাঙল তার. That has happened in the context of the ownership of land between the landowner and the tiller. But what about the distribution within the family? Everywhere women's labor is being deprived of its value, and my submission to you, this is my realization, and I want to share it with all of you who are in academics, who shape minds, that we cannot separate the dignity of a woman's personal body from the dignity of a woman's laboring body. The abuse of a woman's labor is also abuse of the woman's person. And this is in a very, very practical sense, that in the actual workplace, a woman is almost routinely abused. And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, we are no different from our sisters who work in the brick kiln, or work in construction, or work in a textile factory. In universities and in newspaper offices, a woman is subjected to the same kind of indignity just to be able to work, to be able to survive, to be able to show her potential. She is made to pay an awful price. Abuse is a condition of your work. This is what it has come to. And you all saw that in the India versus Priya Ramani case in 2018, when the Me Too movement burst in India. So we have to, as working women who have a voice, we have to make somehow this very important point that women's labor has to be given dignity and given its due. The state itself is creating armies of underpaid women. মিড ডে মিল যারা রান্না করে তারা মানে দিনে 70 টাকাও পায় না 150-200 ছেলে মেয়েদের জন্য রান্না করার জন্য। And the state says that this is fine. So this is the kind of thing that we are up against. And like Rosina, I would also say that there are many levels of fighting this. There is a level where we have to change policy. There is a level where we have to suggest the changes that need to be made in policy, but there is also a personal level, and in that personal level, let us also not devalue the labor of women who work for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Swati. I'll open up the panel because I have some questions, then I'll go to you to ask those questions. My first question would go to Rosina. Rosina, you said that I think if the people, and you also pointed it out, that if you have anybody watched Panchayat here? It's a Netflix, yes. And if you remember, the lady is a Panchayat lady and she doesn't get to talk. Her husband leads the Panchayat. On that context, how do we, as you said, in a day-to-day basis, make the girls or make the women talk? Because once they go back home, they face that husband. Daily they go back and face that husband. Do we have a support system yet that can help the lady to come out of that situation?
I don't know if I can answer the question that you put about support systems. I mean, so
How do we build up, maybe?
Yeah, how do we build up? I mean, I think the personal involvement is to actually build up expectations, or to build up, a confidence to make demands. I think that's what we, on a one-to-one basis, we can do that. I just want to make one little medical thing that is part of this systemic problem. Before I worked in Tata Medical Center, when I used to do a broader kind of practice than I do now, there were a lot of women that used to come to me with various true medical problems that were caused by not drinking enough water. And why were they not drinking water? Because they had to go out to work and there are no toilets. Okay? So there are little things. I mean, policy is difficult and takes a lot of time to change. But these sort of demands of day-to-day life have got to come from the women who are experiencing these problems, and somehow women can be very good at suppressing these type of things, ignoring it, saying, well, you know, that's the way it is. They need to, they feel they'll lose their jobs or they'll be discriminated against or whatever it is. And I think, you know, this is also something that exists with things like maternity leave and whatnot. I'm in a position now where I have 2 juniors. One has just gone on to maternity leave and another one will do in a month or so. And you know, I work in a pretty, I would say, a good organization. You know, an organization that is at least willing to listen. But the fact that people haven't really thought about some of these issues, you know, like if this woman is not there, who's going to do the job? And they see it as, you know, paying that maternity leave is something that the hospital has to do legally. But they don't see it as, well, she's been doing a job, and so this is something extra that we need to do. They see a salaried person that they don't want to pay, and they don't want to pay 2 salaries to replace someone to actually do that work. And so women get discriminated against. When we're doing interviews, I see some of my colleagues asking questions that I would never think of asking, which is, you know, are you married? Have you got any children? Do you plan to have any children in the next couple of years? These are people doing junior level jobs that, that will last for a year or 2. And this is in an industry where, in fact, the majority of workers are actually women, because the vast majority of nurses are women. And if in this industry people do not understand you know, the contribution that the women are making and make it difficult in this way, well, I must say a lot of industries must be far worse than this. And it's very depressing to think of it.
They actually are. And if you go across, I don't know how much you step out and go into the high-tech industry, the tech industry, it's pretty difficult for women out there, though on paper, in fact, I'll just go 2 days ago, I was visiting Delhi and I was visiting these institutes because I have to do it part of my work, and they said that they are monitored at every hour. So even drinking water or stepping out to do something, that is also monitored. Though they are not, they're part of the tech industry, but not fully into the tech industry. So it's kind of difficult, the needs of the women. I remember meeting an IS officer way back, not way back, 3 to 4 years ago, and she said that she was the first woman in the Shipping Corporation of India, and she had walked into office and she had asked for the loo. And the bearer had shown that side officers. She walked in that side officers and it was a man's loo. So she went back to the bearer. She said, that's officers. That's it. There was no women's loo in that building. And this is Shipping Corporation of India. So we can imagine where we are. We can imagine where we are. And on that note, Mamatadi, you had been talking about sensitization of the students. I deal with students also, and it's a big issue, sensitization. You had talked about the mother, the family, and everything. I would organize, because we all want to work in that area, what would be your advice?
Actually, what I have seen that sensitive, because mostly this kind of sensitization programs are undertaken in women's colleges or women's schools. And as I have already noted, that the sensitization should be more for the male students. That is very much missing in this place. So this is one thing we will have to change, and they are not exactly, they like to attend that. And I'll go back to Rosina, what she was saying. When I joined as a professor in the Department of Economics, Presidency College, there was only one common washroom, right, for the teachers. So only I was one, then another lady joined. But I actually took up the matter consistently and every time that it has to be separated. And I find now that it was separated ultimately, and my male colleagues did not like that. They often used to say, no, it's too short for us, too small for us, everything, but it was. That way it was a kind of sensitization for the students also, right? They could also understand that this way we have to intervene. Whenever there is a problem, it is your own problem might be, but it will affect everyone. So sensitization not only in holding programs, in action, that is missing.
Thank you, Madhuri. Shanti, I have a question for you. You talked about women in labor force, you talked about their participation, you talked about them. I would want to bring in here, what about their payments? What about their pay parity? And you talked about the dignity of labor in offices. What about the pay gaps? In my knowledge, what I have, there is a huge pay gap between men and women, and the women hardly know half the time.
Well, I think the problem starts absolutely at the basis, which is what are the terms of employment. So you will find, of course, as we all know, more than 90% of women are in the informal sector. And once you're in the informal sector, basically you are, but there is no minimum floor wage or anything. And it is actually accepted that for the same work you will get less pay. The only scheme where same pay for same work is actually given is the NREGA. And even there, routinely a woman's work is measured. It's very funny how a woman is always found to have done less work, say shirked work, too weak to work. A man has never shirked work in West Bengal. They have always get the exact thing that they have done, but women who will actually find they're working, if you go at any site, you will find more women working than men. It's always the women who do less work. So in one block, the women will get equal, and in the next block, where they have organized, they do agitation, they tala লাগিয়ে দেবে গেটে গেলে যদি কম পয়সা দেয় সেখানে তারা ঠিক পয়সা পাবে. In the very next block they will get 20 rupees less. Farm labor, it's accepted that women get less money than women. And West Bengal, let me tell you, we are all, many of us are Bengali here. We should remember this. We are among the last 8 states. Kerala is like several times better than us. So our women are doubly discriminated. They earn less than the men, and they earn less than women in Rajasthan or Haryana or Kerala or Karnataka. So this is what is happening with labor. Now, with farm labor. Now, if you look at any kind of per piece, what is happening is there was a time, even say in Metia Buruj or in places like this, where people used to work in big karkhana, in big workshops. So, bidi. Okay, so they would come together or sit in one place and work, whether it's sewing, tailoring, or it's rolling bidi. But now they don't even want to do that, because when many people come together, they understand what is happening, who is getting what. So all the work is being pushed to the homes, and everything is per piece, and the per piece rate is constantly being pushed down.
That means work-life, if it's pushed at home, work-life balance also goes?
There is no such thing as work-life balance. It's an idea. Who has, show me one person, please put up your hand, who has achieved work-life balance? Women know that they have to do it. Men know they don't need to. That's the only difference. They have a life. Women have a work life and a home life. Men just have life. But I mean, and you know, the funny thing is, and I'll just tell a story. I mean, why just talk about the sad things? We all know how sad things are. So suppose you want to say, like, if you're a reporter, you are supposed to be on duty for 24 hours, right? I mean, you don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't have anything, you are. Now the funny thing is that after 7 o'clock, even after 7 o'clock, you are supposed to stay on, even if you were there from the morning. So the men will typically tell the chief reporter, okay, I'm going to the press club. You know, if you need me, just call me. And now what does the woman do? She doesn't want to go to the press club. She sits there and works. And for that, somebody will come and tell me, don't you have anybody at home? Isn't your child waiting? And if I go home the next day, they say, why did you join journalism? Why do you want to be a reporter? So either way, you are losing out. Either you're a hurtless woman who neglects a child mercilessly, or you are a reporter who is rushing home, shirking work.
So either way, they are getting slammed.
There is no, it's a situation where you can't win. This is the perception. Actually, I mean, I'm very sorry, but I don't know, when we go to schools for our children are interviewed, what does that mean? And typically this teacher, who is a working woman, will ask me, a working woman, who is going to teach your child, who is going to look after your child if you are working. And I should be asking, how did you do it? How are you doing? I do it the same way. But no mother is ever so courageous to say that and say, my mother-in-law will look after, my mother-in-law, I'll keep an eye on. Who's looking after the ayah's children?
Fundamentally, therefore, probably the expectations that we are building throughout our society is kind of skewed.
It has always been skewed. The thing is that even after showing us that we have done everything that a man can and we have done better, these expectations have not changed. When we were young, we thought, you know, that this is where I think our country has let us down. That we had thought, we were always told that if you study hard, if you get a good job, if you're good at your job, then you'll have the same life as a man who has done all the same things as you. We had sort of tacitly believed in the fairness of that, and so we worked harder than men.
Maybe not man, maybe we need to change the dialogue. Maybe we just say it's gender. Maybe don't eulogize the man. We don't eulogize the son that is born in our families. Why is it that still shushu, shashuri and the boy gets more priority?
Because he inherits.
If you go, yes, absolutely. So where is that fundamental right comes in? Where is those Bengali serials? Yes, I think the audience needs to talk now. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to say a word.
Yes.
Can I say that I would like to
Bengali serials. Looking for it, Bengali serials. So
People love it.
সিরিয়াল যিনি লেখেন তিনি তো মহিলা গবেষণের হেড, কি বলবেন?
কমার্শিয়াল দিকটা দেখছি।
Actually, I have this problem. You can hear me. I have an omaic voice. Hello. Okay. I have this problem, when we are talking constantly about women's issues and all that. Somehow, everywhere, we have this very bad habit of excluding ourselves, as if we have not done anything wrong. But we are complicit in what is happening. We are very much part of it.
Are we complicit? We are also a part of it.
That's what I said. We are, by accepting, like what my mother accepted, if I accept, and I teach my daughter to accept, things are not going to change. They will not change overnight, right?
Exactly.
I wouldn't call it an enemy, but I would say that we are complicit, definitely. We constantly, the expectations that are raised by us. I want to be super mom. I want to be super teacher. I want to be super admin. The man he doesn't work to any yardstick. He's very happy not to take his son playing cricket. I have played cricket with my son throughout his childhood. My husband slept on Sunday afternoons. I didn't complain. I always said, Baba ghumoche.
একটা দিন ছুটি পায়, forgetting I get one day off also. But it seemed so nice because I was such a great wife also. You see. So,
I think we have to start.
so we have to start saying no. Push the barrier. Don't take the son for his cricket coaching. Tell him, do it yourself, or the son does not learn to be Rahul Dravid. Sorry, if he's not Dravid, it's not my fault. So we, I think, need to reorient ourselves, rewire ourselves. That was all. Thanks.
There will be rise of divorce cases.
No, no, no.
Yes.
True. They will not. They will not.
Not at all.
And the other thing,
Shake the board.
you have to, Shumita Di, somebody has to say no for the thing to start.
And no, my point is that supposing this causes divorce, why not?
It won't cause, because I'm very sure the gentleman in question knows where which side his bread is
I
buttered.
want to put in a bit about this women's toilet which you're talking about. I'm a lawyer. I work with Bombay High Court. I'm telling you, we have a lot of cases about the women's toilets. Now, at the rudimentary level, whether it's a village, whether it's a hi-fi office, whether it's a high-tech office, whether it's a low-tech office, wherever you go, women's toilets do not get preferences. But it is the woman who picks it up and says that we want a toilet. The moment you do that, things are very different. The point is, somebody has to raise that voice. Where do you start? You start with the mother. Now the mother, if she differentiates between the son and the daughter,
Can I segue into this? And there can be a solution. Can the boy child be told to pee in the bathroom and not on the road?
why only the boy child? Everybody, whether
Why the girls have to hold themselves and the boy has to go anywhere on the road?
because the boy doesn't have a biological disadvantage. Boy does not have a biological disadvantage. We do not differentiate between the two. See, the biological disadvantage which the girl has, the boy doesn't have. But that does not mean that we extend it to a point where the girl and the boy are differentiated in their upbringings. They're totally two different things. One thing is taking care of the girl.
Somebody else wants to speak. Yes.
The panel has raised a lot of questions and a lot of thought. Really interesting, because I work in the field of managing institutes. And what has happened is I've realized that our culture, Indian culture, has created a role model for women. And for us, families are very important. And what has happened is, if you see right from the beginning, because we have had our parents, our grandparents, everybody looking after families. So, since the family structure is so important, we have still not changed that perception, come what may. And I strongly believe that woman is the nucleus of any family, because we are made differently. However, we have seen that our male, that is a child who is a boy, or our men who are around us, we have not exposed them to that feeling of caring and sharing. So according to me, sensitizing our boys, our men into spaces that holds very important for a family structure is very important. And I think as a women's organization, as a speaker just now said, that we need to share this with our young boys, and we need to give them experiences of how beautiful it is to be caring and sharing. That is one. And another thing is, we are doing it, we call it as mindful parenting program. That is one. The other area which I see that maybe we can do is create infrastructure for our working women, because we do not have excellent daycare centers. So I think that we need to have more daycare centers, because come what may, it may take a lot of generations for us to go away from playing that mother's role. And we have created in our institutes a daycare center just for our working women and for the staff who are having children. Because we said that if the government is not doing something, let us do for our institutes. So I think this message has to go very clear as maybe a policy with the government, but till that policy is established, maybe we need to sound this out that yes, we need to have more daycare centers. And even amongst the senior citizens, we could easily have daycare centers there. I'm sure 60 is not a year to retire, but then if we could have daycare centers attached to senior citizens organizations, I'm sure both would benefit and we could keep our Indian culture in safe hands. Thank you.
Can I say something here?
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to make a short observation. When we say of family structure, it is better perhaps to say family structures, because there are many kinds of family. We typically think of the husband, wife, and children as the family, but should we just go into our slums and our villages, you will find that there is a huge percentage of concealed single motherhood. Either the women have already been abandoned with their children, and she may be nominally married, but she is actually bringing up the children by herself. Or what we find so much in our villages today is huge migrant labor. So for large part of the year, the man is out of the house. The woman is looking after the elderly and the children. So you are very right, ma'am, that we need care structure. We need to invest majorly. I don't know why infrastructure always means roads and buildings. It should mean Anganwadi centers. It should mean daycare centers. Yes, and it's easy to get commission while construction. But what we need by infrastructure is human infrastructure. We need more caring people. Otherwise, women will never be able to be productive.
May I just ask Shati to go one step further? The women who are abandoned with children are very often the women that work as domestic workers in our homes in the city. And they're pushed to the homes in the city because they need an income to support the children. But how does this is even more complex than an abandoned woman, because now the child is also abandoned in a sense.
Absolutely. She is. And if you ever go into a rural school where some women who are always the thinnest and lightest of women, they are cooking the midday meal, their children are playing in the dust, all the children are malnutritioned. This is a typical scenario. Who are you employing for a nutrition program? She can't give enough nutrition to her child. What does it mean? Our projects have become fetish for development. This is what Amartya Sen has said, that the projects of development cannot become fetish for development. Everything that is being done in the name of women's empowerment is nothing but fetish. And we have to protest against that.
Another thing that I have seen, some 15 years ago when I went into some villages to talk to women, mainly Asha workers. There were women mainly in healthcare. They were Asha workers and some were Anganwadi workers. But they are seen as volunteers.
Yes.
And the fact that, you brought it up earlier, that they are not paid a wage. And it is seen by the government in this sort of top-down system that we have, that just giving them the respect that they are volunteers in their community is somehow going to mean more to them than the fact that they need some money to feed their children, or they, do something, whatever it may be, educate their children. So by making them volunteers, I find that for that sort of person, it is completely inadequate. Giving them the respect of volunteers, how does that help them in a practical way?
And they're constantly threatened to be suspended.
Yes, there is that too.
You don't employ them.
They're sort of forced into being volunteers. Yes. They're not given a choice about whether they can volunteer.
Questions here, comments.
So I just want to give a totally different perspective on all the discussions that have happened. She said that women don't have a voice to express themselves, or they know what they want to say, but they're not allowed to speak, and various other things that have happened. I'm a counselor, and I talk to a lot of young women. As you all must be aware, there's this generation of youngsters who are very confused, don't know what they want to do, especially the ones who are there in their 20s. They all have a basic education degree, unsure of what they want to do. They're unsure of what is the kind of partner they want in life, especially the young women. And I think a lot of things is connected because you say families need to be sensitized, you say men need to be sensitized. I think women also need to understand themselves and know their own mind. The time has come for that. And yes, there are different sections of society in India. We're sitting in this room, we're all very privileged. We've been allowed to make some choices, take some choices forward. Support systems are there in some of our families to achieve some of our goals. We do multitask, we try to achieve work-life balance. It's not been perfect. So I usually tell all the young women I talk to that first learn to love yourself enough that you can express what is it that you want. Be it the partner. There are many young girls who are law graduates, who are graduates in engineering, but when it comes to telling their parents, this is the kind of guy I want, or I like this guy from the last 5 years in college and I want to marry, they don't have the courage. And it's not just the culture or the religion or the background, it's just not the same language background. Today, it's multicultural society in India. So I tell them you need to like yourself enough. You need to love yourself enough to learn to speak up. And I think all of us in our individual capacities as the professionals that we are, I need to put that in somewhere when we're talking. The academicians can spend maybe 10 minutes every day just talking in general with the girls so that they feel, yes, there's a point here. I need to learn how to communicate better. There are many young women who can't communicate with their parents because of the fear. They've been brought up in the cultural system, as we've discussed in this room. We know the various things that are. They understand that boys are not sensitized enough. They don't know what kind of a partner they will get and what space they will get. Forget work, forget clothes they wear. Even whether they'll have a space in the family to speak up and express, what are their things. So I personally tell most youngsters, first figure out yourself. Like yourself enough to feel that it's important for you lifelong. The kind of job you do, the kind of guy you marry. Because once you take the wrong step, you're stuck in a situation where we come up with all the other issues that we have discussed. And it's very clear that educating the woman as much as you can also empowers her a lot. Because a lot of the rural people, as we have seen from your experiences, when they have a good education, they're able to come up in life. They don't get left behind. We have seen many, many young people now coming up with education, skills training, etc., who are doing well. So this is just a thought that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. We are at the end of our, you've already, yes ma'am, please.
Extremely energized. Each one of us, we've got so much to say. But all that I would like to say is that this entire concept of discussing women being low is actually coming from social conditioning. Down the years, thanks to Manusmriti, the first is the father, then the husband, then the son, which has become a gospel and a Bible to us, has really ruined us. There are instances in families, in rural, in urban, qualified, influenced, unemployed families, where the mindset is the same because the perception of the women have not changed in the eyes of the man. And let me tell you, we tend to blame the men, yes, of course, not blame, but that is the way the society is. But there are situations where even women are very happy to say that we are being finely taken care of by our husbands, even if they're suffering to the hilt. It is because that top level is always in us, that we are here to serve. The servile attitude of women in every respect, that we cannot speak that we need a toilet, let the man go first because he has office. I also have work, but I am the sacrificed goat. And I am finding very happy to be in that sacrificed state. This mindset, unless it is changed, we cannot speak of any development, any program. The only thing I would like to say that right now in India, very happy to read in the newspapers that the Kerala government is now giving 7 days of holiday to menstruating girls. Very happy that the transgender people, we've got a vice chancellor now in Nadia University, Manubi Banerjee. These are social changes that are happening. However, we have miles to go before we sleep because women have to raise their own voices, and that is where the question of advocacy comes in. Thank you.
You got one last, ma'am. Erpore shesh kori.
Madam, in our state also, 1 year maternity leave is availing, no? 10 months maternity leave for everywhere. It is our all help to empower our, definitely. Little by little, it will get down to the day, everyday salary people, coolies we are calling, no? It will be let down. Surely it will flourish within as early as possible. These are all flourishing empowerment of women is my mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much for interacting with us. And I would want to recite this on a note that we need to love ourselves. Pretty women wonder this is by Maya Angelou. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I am not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it is in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman, that's me. So let us be phenomenal women. Thank you.
Thank you to the moderator for wonderful moderation.
I know it's been a very, very interesting morning and afternoon. Thank you to all the panelists and wonderfully moderated. But I'm going to start with a little story which happened to me this morning. When I was coming here, I usually chat with my driver because he, poor thing, only drives and he feels very, pent up with all his stories. So I was just asking him, oh, you have a cousin who works in a film star's house in Bombay, right? So he said, no, she's come back. She's built a house in Murshidabad. Her husband sent her back, and now he's gone to do a job over there. He took a girl from the village, and now he's got married to her. So she's got a house. She's got plenty of money from Rani Mukherjee, but she's lost her husband. So I said, and you had another cousin who's doing something in politics. I said, yes, she's a councillor. She's a village woman, and she's a councillor in Murshidabad. So these are the kind of contrasts you see in our country for women. I'm not talking universally, but whatever has been discussed today is absolutely what we all know, feel, and hopefully we will take more action on this. But the thing is that we have all really actually turned pretty complacent because we're so busy with our lives, trying to balance the so-called work-life stuff. But I think that after today's discussions, there's only one gentleman sitting over here, and I'm sure he's feeling very sorry for his lot. But we really actually need all of you also. Thank you of course, I'm in absentia. I would like to thank Swamiji Suparnandaji Maharaj, Secretary of Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture, because without him, this place would not have been given to us, or we couldn't have listened to such a wonderful speech that he had given. I would like to thank our IFWA President, Dr. Ranjana Banerjee, past IFWA President, Ina Khidi, with whom I worked very closely for 3 years. These are the two ladies who have made us proud of our organization as presidents. We lost one of them. Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee is also not here, but in absentia, I would like to thank him. Today, he really kind of juggled our minds by giving those two examples of two women. And I'm sure we will all take that back home and sit and think about it very seriously. Dr. Madhupar Bokshi, your moderation, as I told you, was fantastic. Very nice. The way you took the whole talk around, and the way you were able to absolutely sew together the whole day's program. And of course, all the three ladies sitting next to me, they are my favorites. I was so excited to see that I have Shati Bhattacharya, who came and spoke here so beautifully. She knows so much about Anganwadi workers and, the grassroots level, which is where we should start from. And I've known her for many, many years. Mamata Di, I know her from my college. And Rosina is 1 year my junior in school, and I'm so proud of each one of them and the way they spoke today. And of course, the audience was all awake, alive, and thank you for all those discussions that you did. Whatever you said, I think everybody is going to store all that in their brains for the rest of the 2 days that we have, and then onward. The enthusiastic members of our UWAC who worked very hard. And last but of course not the least, I would like to thank President Shumita Rai and the committee members and past presidents of UW Calcutta. Thank you so much. And I think now you'll be very relieved. Please go and enjoy your lunch. Okay, I did mention the audience, but thank you so much, audience, and thank you for participating. Because when you don't have questions, it becomes very boring. And the only gentleman, thank you for being here. Ki hotta hai এখন?
They have to assemble here for tea at 3:30.
Okay, first please have your lunch and then assemble here for tea at 3:30.
Going to Victoria Memorial, have to leave by 4.
Okay, it's been announced. Yeah. The audience includes every representative from each UWAC. Thank you for being here.